I want to talk a little bit about intermittent fasting or just fasting in general. This is somewhat of a new topic that people haven't really thought about or tried for a while. There's certainly people doing religious fasts and things, but I want to talk about it more from a fitness, a health aspect of fasting. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Philip Boob. I'm a medical doctor here in Austin, Texas, and I practice functional medicine. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about intermittent fasting. So first off, what is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is the idea that you are going to go a period of time on purpose, not eating any food, not taking in any calories. And this can span anywhere from, it's typically at least 12 hours, more likely 16 hours, and sometimes upward of 24 or even 36 hours. Most people seem to be, at least the research right now, seems to be stopping at 24 hours. There's multiple different programs as far as intermittent fasting, so I'll discuss a few of them. The most common one right now seems to be the daily intermittent fasting, which basically means that I'm going to skip breakfast or skip dinner and I'm going to go about 16 hours without eating, and for 8 hours out of the day, I'm going to consume all of my calories. The idea behind this actually kind of goes back to our ancestors who didn't have a refrigerator, who didn't have cupboards full of food, and had to scavenge for their food. So if you slept 8 hours, you would have to walk and go find food, and then once you find it, you'd have to dig it up or climb a tree or prepare it, and then you would eat. And so they didn't always have food readily available. The 16-hour fast is a little less like our ancestors than really going 24 hours. You can imagine that if you were trying to hunt an animal and you missed throwing your spear or trying to kill this animal, you might not eat for 24 hours. And so the idea is that we're waking up some of our ancient DNA. People frequently think, and I would say most of medicine thought, that your DNA is who you are and you are stuck with your DNA. But now we know there's something called epigenetics, which says that you choose which DNA markers that you turn on. And it's pretty safe to say that most Americans don't go much time at all without eating some sort of food. And so there's DNA that we're just not even touching, not even awakening, that our ancestors relied on all the time, especially when it froze and there wasn't really access to food, or they had to go scavenging for food through snow. So waking up ancient DNA can be a good thing. Now, obviously fasting for too long and getting muscle wasting and all kinds of things, that's not a good idea. That's not really what we're talking about here. What I'm trying to talk about is limiting your food intake for a certain amount of time. So the first option I mentioned was the daily intermittent fasting, where you go 16 hours. Most people fast overnight, skip breakfast, and then eat lunch. And so that's 16 hours. Another way to do it is to skip one or fast for 24 hours every week. And so what you would do is you would pick one meal as your last meal. So say lunch. Lunch is my last meal, and I'm not going to eat another meal until lunch the next day, and that goes your 24 hours. The current thinking is that you want to still consume the same amount of calories as if you weren't skipping any meals, but you want to make sure they're lower carb, of course, making sure you're getting your adequate protein and fats. But the idea is that you're just not consuming any calories for those 16 to 24 hours. So why do we do this? What's the purpose of this? The idea is that if we're always in the fed state, you always have insulin around, floating in the bloodstream, stimulating fat growth, stimulating cholesterol production. And the more insulin that's around, the more insulin resistant you get. And the more insulin resistant you get, the more inflamed and the more weight you gain. Insulin is a hormone just like many other hormones, and if there's too much of it around for too long, then the body gets resistant to it. So let me explain that a little bit, because not everyone understands insulin resistance. I like to use the metaphor of someone who really enjoys loud music and is going deaf. So if your insulin levels are high all the time, it's like you like loud music, and so you turn up the music, but your ears start going deaf from the loud music, but you still enjoy loud music. So how do you experience loud music when you're going deaf? You turn it up louder. And basically the idea is that you can only turn the radio up so loud, and you can't enjoy it as much. So that's what a diabetic becomes. Basically, their body can only produce X amount of insulin, but they're eating way more carbs than the amount of insulin they can produce. It's not really that they're not producing enough insulin, it's that their insulin just doesn't work. So entering this fasted state drastically drops your insulin, because insulin is only released when you eat mostly carbs. So when you're in this fasted state, your insulin levels are drastically low, and it gives your body the time to reset. Like, okay, we're not seeing insulin for 16 hours, so when it does show up, I can respond to it and be sensitive to it. So intermittent fasting is a great idea if you have any kind of sugar issues, pre-diabetes, diabetes. Not so great for type 1 diabetics. That's a little tricky, and I always want to make that disclaimer. Their situation is a lot different. But if you're looking to reset your insulin sensitivity, maybe shed some fat pounds, that's a good way to maintain your muscle mass while stimulating your body to go into this fat burning state. The reason I mention it wakens ancient DNA is because we don't use fasted DNA very long or very often. I mean, we all fast when we sleep, so we all go at least 8 hours without sleeping. But burning up your glycogen stores, which is your sugar storage inside of your liver, can actually provide you some benefits, lose weight. And when you burn up those glycogen stores and your body has to rebuild them, that actually burns calories in order to rebuild those glycogen stores. So even if you're not eating the exact amount of calories, burning extra calories to build glycogen can help you further lose weight. So I just did a 6-mile run after fasting for about 21 hours. And so that basically put me directly into ketosis through the fasting, which means my body wasn't relying on sugar at all for metabolism. It was relying on fat. And I was burning the fat and making ketones as the energy source. And then when I went out and exercised, it still didn't have any sugar, so I had to manufacture its own sugar to feed the muscles. And so the body's not very good at manufacturing sugar, so it takes even more energy to manufacture that sugar. So not only did I burn the calories of the workout, but I also burned additional calories manufacturing my own sugar. And so it's almost about 24 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and eat my dinner and try to consume some of those calories, not necessarily all of the calories. And so that's a new idea for you to try, especially if you're plateaued, if you've kind of lost weight and you're just kind of stuck in a spot and you can't seem to move any further. Just kind of shaking up the body, giving it some new DNA to work with, a new mentality. It is worth a try. So try intermittent fasting. There's tons of data online about it. I would first try the 16-hour fast. I'd say most of the people that say, oh, I can't ever do 24 hours without food, is mostly just a mental hurdle. After you wake up and skip breakfast, so for me, my last meal was dinner. After you've skipped breakfast, your body's already burning fat, and so you're really not that hungry all day long. Now, if somebody brings a burger and fries and sits down in front of you, you're going to be hungry. That's just a natural response. But you'd be surprised at how the lack of hunger is there because your body's already burning fat, and everyone has fat stores ready to go. Even marathon runners have 50,000 calories of fat ready to go in their body, even when they're skinny like a beanpole. So don't worry, you're not going to die if you don't eat food for 24 hours. Try it out. Let me know if it works. Give us some feedback. Please feel free to like and share this, and let any of your colleagues know that might be struggling with their weight to try intermittent fasting. Good luck.